and welcome to another AAIS webinar. I'm John Kadous, Vice President of Products at AAIS. Today, we will be taking a look at the need for speed to market in insurance with AAIS partner GhostDraft. I'm joined by Laurence White, EVP of Sales at GhostDraft, to talk about the importance and challenges of speed to market. Together, we will discuss modern technologies and innovations that can accelerate internal processes, as well as how to balance speed and compliance, and the growing need for adaptable solutions and tools that can empower insurers to confidently navigate the industry's shifting terrain. Laurence, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to partner with you for today's webinar. I'm very excited to discuss this hot topic with everybody that's joined us.
As am I. Let's kick things off with the first really broad question. How do you define speed to market in the context of insurance, and why is it crucial for insurers?
Well, for us here at GhostDraft, John, we talk about the speed to market in the context of an insurer's ability to very quickly and efficiently introduce new products or services or make updates to products that already exist and put them into the market as quickly as they possibly can. So from our perspective, and the reason why we're here today to talk about this topic is really covers the entire life cycle of beginning with product ideation, moving through the product development process, going through all of the regulatory approval that's required in a highly regulated industry such as property and casualty insurance. Then you think about all of the marketing and distribution and the ever important need to deliver on customer engagement. So we see it as critical for our customers and carriers in general to be first to market with product innovation, making sure that those products address emerging customer needs, especially when you look at the overriding context of being in a very fast-paced environment and the need to have significant competitive advantage. So we know that customer expectations remain high, and probably those heights are increasing. And so the ability to respond rapidly and with tailored solutions to meet competitive needs is really crucial. So we like to work with insurers so that they can quickly adapt to those changing demands, but also position themselves very well to retain existing and attract new customers as well. So there's a number of ways that can be achieved, and I think we'll talk about those a little bit later on. But we all know that the ability to streamline processes that exist and really delivering on that ability to reduce the time it takes to put a product in front of a prospective customer or make changes and updates to products that for existing customers as well. We want to do that in as cost-effective a way as possible, and again as efficiently as possible. And we see that there's a definite relationship between the ability to move quickly and make put those products in place very quickly to generating increasing revenues and keeping yourself competitive. So last but not least, what we also realize is that speed to market is not just a one-time thing, right? It's something that is really a continuous journey. And so we like to work with our customers to ensure that they're fostering an innovative culture, making sure that they can easily collaborate around their organizations and continuously improving and adapting and evolving so that they can stay ahead of the competition.
Yeah, and that's a terrific overview. I mean, the reality is it really is a fast-growing or a fast-moving marketplace at this point in time. And in order to not fall behind, you've got to be able to adapt. You got to be able to make changes to what you've got in market, and you got to be able to adopt new programs rapidly. So what are really the key challenges that insurers typically face when trying to enhance their speed to market?
A great question, and it's a long list, John. So I'll try and cover off a few of the really pertinent topics here. one thing I think, all of us have been around the insurance industry for quite some time. And what we know is we're typically dealing with a somewhat conservative industry, certainly as far as adopting new technologies may be concerned, right? So we encounter a lot of carriers that are working with legacy systems and legacy processes as well. And so the ability to quickly integrate new technologies within those legacy systems, and not necessarily always replacing those legacy systems, because as we know, that can be a very timely and very costly exercise. So the ability to be adaptive and to try and integrate new and responsive technologies within those legacy environments is pretty important, but again can be also very complex and very time consuming. What we also see as well is the need to foster very effective collaboration, right? There are lots of stakeholders involved. When you think about how an insurance product is created and moved through its life cycle, there are so many stakeholders, and the ability to accurately collaborate and effectively collaborate and communicate amongst all of the different departments and all of the various stakeholders within a carrier organization is a really critical process, or a critical part of the process to effect the change and streamline all of these different processes that relate to the product development environment. Of course, there's lots of challenges around that too. So you've got siloed organizations that aren't necessarily governed by the same set of goals to each other, right? And so the ability to break down those barriers between, the underwriting group, product development, IT, marketing, compliance, all of the different people that are involved in putting a product in market and putting it in place successfully, the ability to foster that collaboration and communication is really key, and something that we see a lot of organizations struggling with. And then add on to that, again, these growing and rising and ever-changing customer expectations certainly always present a pretty decent challenge to the carrier. And then we mentioned it briefly a little while ago, but also whilst trying to overcome all of those challenges, then we have the business of remaining compliance with regulators, right? So 50 state regulation organizations, if you're a national writer, can certainly present very, very many challenges and can be almost an uncontrollable hindrance to speed to market, right? If you're trying to put new products in place, you go through all of the regulatory requirements that are involved there, certainly can give you delays in launching products. And then, coupled with that, we see, we're in a world now where the products themselves can be incredibly complex, especially when we think about commercial insurers and the different lines that they're writing and the different customer segments that they're responding to. We have so many new requirements that are being established within the customer base and the policyholder base, which again makes things more complicated, makes remaining compliant a little tougher, which all of these things are definitely barriers to this topic of speed to market that we're talking about today. I guess we can also talk about competitive pressures too. Once you realize that somebody else has put something into market and you decide that that's a business that you want to be in, then you've got to compete both with those traditional competitors and the big increase in insurtech startups that we're seeing in the marketplace today. And then all of that kind of comes together, and I think where our partnership between GhostDraft and AAIS is pretty important is making sure that you're able to leverage new technologies, things like AI. Everybody is talking about AI in our space and pretty much across all industries right now, and machine learning and automation. And making sure that you can bring those things into your ecosystem, and those are pre-integrated maybe with your core administration systems, and ensuring that you can stay in front of and be on top of those all of the technological integrations that are required.
Yeah, and that's a do I say terrific list of challenges, or it's a very long list of challenges, and definitely some very fundamental issues there for insurance carriers as they're looking to implement new products. One of them that you mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and throw another question out there on now. And we chatted a little bit about this before we started the session today, and that is, well, was that first point you touched on, those legacy systems, and some of the challenges around legacy systems and processes, because that's something that we experience when we're working with our members as well. We may update a program, and companies sometimes are a little bit reluctant to do that because of, well, there's a lot of work involved, and that work may or may not be on their roadmap right now. They may have other things they want to get done. How can you help companies who really are struggling with that legacy kind of technical debt that would otherwise be slowing them down?
I mean, really, John, the issue there, as I mentioned, is, if you can work with an innovative technology that is in our context, cloud native, right? Something that is very, very easily consumable. And the pre-integration, I think, is critical as well. So here at GhostDraft, obviously with the partnership that we formed with AAIS and our ability to pre-build all of the form libraries, right? That means a lot of the work that a carrier might need to do from a product definition perspective is already taken care of. I think, a lot of times here at GhostDraft, we hear the comments around it's just forms. They exist. They're out there. We'll worry about that later, right? As they're going through, maybe potentially going through upgrades to their core administration systems and the like. Forms, as you know, and as we know, because it's the business that we're in, are way complex and require a lot of attention to detail. And because of the compliance and the regulatory demands that we have, we know that it has to be done correctly. So if you can leverage technology that can be easily integrated into your environment, whether that's a legacy environment or a new environment, using like API calls, for example, something that's very quick to set up, and that has some pre-built content, then I think you can really take advantage of that and kind of help address some of those issues that you may have with legacy products.
Fantastic. How can insurers really best balance that speed with the necessity of adhering to regulatory requirements?
I mean, it's the big topic of the day, right, John? Speed's essential, but compliance is equally, if not more, essential and critical, right? So no sense putting the fastest technology into your organization if you can't ensure that you can remain compliant as you're going through all of the process, right? So, there's a need really to set up systems and implement them if they don't exist, or leverage them if they do already exist, to continually monitor what's happening throughout the product development lifecycle, I suppose, is a good way of thinking about it. All of the maintenance that's required to ensure that you're remaining compliant in a rapidly changing landscape is very important. So that means, review and update processes that exist and all of the procedures that exist to ensure that you're aligning the processes that you carry out within your organization with, new and emerging regulations that are coming from the industry. So being able to quickly adapt and make changes in a rapid manner is pretty important. And so we look at that as, adopting newer or modern agile methodologies, right? So an agile framework which encourages collaboration across all of those departments, as I was talking about earlier, and really fostering a culture of continuous improvement and being ready for the compliance requirements that are coming down the line. And so one way of really doing that is to standardize, right? If you are standardizing, like, for example, with the AAIS product group, then that means that you can kind of take some of those decision points out of your processes and say, okay, if I leverage something that's already compliant, then all I've got to do after that is ensure that I'm staying on top of it and continuing to meet all of the different obligations you have from a compliance and a regulatory perspective.
All right, fantastic. And I see we've had a couple of questions come in. So, questions on things that we've had a little bit of conversation around. So, throw the first one out here. How does AI apply to document management and generation? So, AI, and I'm not surprised this is the first question coming in because AI is top of mind for, I'll say, pretty much all of us at this point in time. There's a lot going on in that space, and a lot of us are trying to kind of wrap our brains around what that means in terms of potential opportunities for us within the insurance marketplace. So, question is, how can it speed up the process? And
So
then other question here: are you doing any work with the LLMs?
All right, so I'll attack the AI question first. From contextualize with GhostDraft, right? So when you think about the business that we're in, which is essentially helping to design, develop, and automate a content library, right? A library of documents and forms. And so if we separate off standardized forms, right? So we look at the library of AAIS forms, which GhostDraft builds and maintains on behalf of our mutual customers. I don't think there's a ton of work for AI in that process, but most, if not all, carriers will have some or a lot of proprietary forms, as well as those standardized or proprietary products and forms, as well as those standardized groups of forms and documents. So here at GhostDraft, we're leveraging AI to help with the migration of information, right? So if you're in a modernization process, let's say you've got, a homegrown or maybe another vendor's solution that creates all of the documents and forms that you associate with your products. And you want to decide to modernize, maybe select GhostDraft as a provider. We are leveraging AI for that content migration, which will help. AI is not going to necessarily be able to do all of the work for you, but if we run AI models against all of that existing content, then we can quickly make some assumptions that the business logic and all of the rules, like effective dates and jurisdictions and all of those kinds of things, can make some pretty fair assumptions by running output through an AI model. Again, it's not going to necessarily solve all of those migration concerns, but it's definitely going to reduce some of the time that it might take to move from one area to another.
Yeah, I can see where there would definitely be some potential for lift from that. That's a great one. I've got another question sitting out here, and I think it's something you're going to touch on in the next section. So I'll just, before we move on to that next section, and I think you already know what I want to talk about next, which is modern technology and innovation. How does modern technology and innovation play a role in expediting product development and deployment? And I believe one of the things that, as we've talked through this before, you're probably going to be touching on is the collaborative process. And question that we've got out here, going back to a key challenge you mentioned, fostering a collaborative process for siloed organizations. Any suggestions for shifting mindsets towards a more collaborative product delivery process? So that's the question, and I guess you can either answer that right now, or if you want to build that into your response to the question, really, how can modern technology and innovation play a role?
I think, yeah, John, I think it's one and the same, right?
Yeah.
So I could talk a little bit about GhostDraft and kind of, who we are and what we do. That will kind of lead into, I think, addressing that question while we talk about, modernization and what have you. So GhostDraft is a cloud native solution that was built about a dozen or more years ago, and designed specifically to be used and exclusively used by property and casualty insurers. So our product is basically, you could refer to it as a loosely coupled set of APIs, right? So we don't really have a product that would sit in an underwriting environment and be necessarily used by an underwriter, but it would be leveraged by an underwriter every day as they go about their business. And so what that means is we integrate into policy administration systems, and we have the ability to receive data from those systems and then return a set of published forms. So at its highest level, that's really what GhostDraft does, but kind of relate that to the more general topic of modern technology and innovating. We certainly have designed and built products that kind of fit these topics, and that's agile development, right? So it used to be that we had linear processes, right? If you think about project management that as it existed 10 plus years ago, everything was kind of a waterfall, right? We would do some work and hit some milestones, or all of the follow-on work would wait until some of that work was completed. So, some years ago we moved, I think, industry-wide to a more agile development process, which means breaking down projects into very manageable tasks and fostering agility, so that you can continue to put products in place without waiting for certain other events to transpire. I think also products and solutions that foster the collaboration that we were talking about earlier on. So there are some capabilities that really will enable the broad multi-stakeholder processes that are involved in product development, and allow for audit trails to be set up, for example, right? So I think about the iterative process of designing a new product and the forms associated with it, and somebody in product management will generate a draft. And that draft will be sent to people probably in marketing. It will be sent to people in the compliance team, and managing and making sure that you're working from the latest version of that document, for example, is pretty critical, right? We hear stories all the time when, version 17.9 was used to be the source of truth, and somebody had created versions 18, 19, and 20 in a silo or in a vacuum. And, before you know it, you're in a bit of a mess, and you've got to go through red lines and figure out who said what and when they said it and why they said it, and are we still compliant? So really, having as much technology around that collaboration process and including a communication trail within that as well is pretty important. And then, modern technology brings with it the benefit of automation, and we start thinking about all of the ways that you can automate and streamline some of these processes, and right task people, give them things to do that are not to do with the movement of information through an organization, but actually making critical decisions and business decisions. We like to think, as I mentioned before, when you're working in an industry that has a lot of legacy product around, then selecting solutions and vendors that have API first development and products available is pretty important. So that means that you don't have to impact your core business. For example, if you want to bring in some new technology, and you can send data to that platform and receive data back from that platform without unraveling the spaghetti code that may exist with some of those legacy solutions. And then, of course, providing feedback, right? Enabling key stakeholders within the organization to have insight and visibility into how development is going and where things sit within that development process, so that you can report and be certain that you're letting the appropriate people know, kind of what they need to know, and be satisfied with all of the progress that we've made. As far as modern technology is concerned, I think the main reason why our two organizations have partnered together is where you can leverage something that has already been created, right? So the pre-built bureau content that you have, and our ability to insert that within our platform and manage those forms, so that a carrier can very quickly have access to those forms and map those all of those documents with all of the complex business requirements that go around them, can quickly map those into their core system. Certainly something that can rapidly bring down development time.
Yeah, now that seems like definitely a successful strategy, if you will, for insurers really improving their speed to market. What other strategies beyond leveraging that kind of content, beyond leveraging the AAIS content or other bureau content, but certainly I would say AAIS content. What other strategies are out there that are also very helpful?
Well, I think, again, here at GhostDraft, we kind of live and breathe documents, right? So I think you're absolutely right. We talk about the AAIS forms and documents that exist that we can pre-build. But as I mentioned earlier, most, if not all, carriers would have their own proprietary forms that have to go through a similar process. So GhostDraft has products that help a carrier through every phase of that document lifecycle that enables them to streamline all of the communication processes that are required to develop and maintain those proprietary forms. So we have the ability to automate the generation of policy documents, which is everything related: policy applications, contracts, endorsements, you name it. Also claims documents and complex documents that require third-party additions. If you think about the claims process and the need to attach additional documents, imagery potentially, and have a real collaborative process in developing those, our solution can certainly help with that. And we have a few new unique ways that really help drive that speed to market. And one of the ways that we do that is I like to use the phrase unburdening. So taking the burden away from IT to work on and make all of the changes that are required to remain compliant and remain consistent and remain competitive. I had a customer who essentially, after implementing our solution, were able to empower their business users with all of the content design, all of the business logic, all of the complex rules that we talked about earlier that are required to issue and produce those documents. They were able to move from the design phase to the development phase and through to production, a process that would historically have taken them about 3 months as they waited and open a ticket with IT, wait for IT to accept the ticket, probably exchange some information about requirements, then schedule the work, do the work, test the work, put it into production. They were able to reduce that elapsed time from about 3 months on average to a couple of days. So we see that as an incredibly powerful story when it comes to talking about speed to market.
Absolutely.
We have a few other more technical ways in which we address that, John. And one of I talked a little bit earlier about migration, right? So we certainly see the inclusion of AI when it comes to being able to migrate a large body of content from one environment to another body of content. With GhostDraft, we call it our document domain model. And this is all of the data reference points and all of the business logic that is required to produce this forms lives in one area within the GhostDraft platform that's managed by business people and owned by business people. There's a lot of data mapping that needs to happen when you think about your body or your library of documents, and that's certainly something that would be handled by the IT department when you're looking at XML and JSON data that comes out of a core admin system, right? That's still and probably will always remain within the IT department, but the actual documents themselves and all of the rules that work around those documents, the people that know about that are within the business community. So the document domain model within GhostDraft allows a carrier to develop those documents one time. And let's say, for example, they decide that they want to move from one core administration system to another. They're able to essentially pick up that entire domain and move it into that new environment without changing any of the business rules and any of the logic that is employed to generate that forms. and then have the only task that needs to happen be the mapping of data from that new system into their pre-existing environment.
Wow, that's terrific. All right, so we have a few minutes left for Q&A, and I'll remind folks to please hit that Q&A button. We've got a couple of questions sitting out there right now. But we are kind of moving into the live Q&A session. So again, please, if you've got questions, go ahead and put them out there. And if we don't have a chance to get to them today, we will respond to all those questions. We'll follow up with you on any questions that are put out there. Unless, of course, they're submitted anonymously, which is how most of the questions have come in so far. That makes it a little bit difficult for us to respond directly to you. So, Laurence, I'm going to start you out here with what I think is going to be a very easy question for you. Do you support other types of insurance companies beyond P&C?
We do.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we work.
When I saw the question, I was kind of curious about it myself. So
yeah, we've specialized in property and casualty insurance, as I mentioned, since GhostDraft started in the US. It's about a dozen years ago now. But we have some life insurance customers, and we're currently in investigative mode to determine we're probably going to move into a little bit of the group health and group benefits world as well.
Oh, excellent.
And let me make sure, you know, when we talk about P&C, we're including things like workers' comp in there as well, right?
Sure. All right. Another question. Can you talk about specific integration that GhostDraft has had with AAIS's pre-built forms? Without naming names, please.
Yeah, so we have our partnership is relatively new, and we hope over the coming year and years to have a large stable of organizations that will be using both our technology and your expertise. Right now, we have a handful of customers that are using content from AAIS produced by GhostDraft.
All right, excellent. Excuse me. A question out here, which is that apparently there's been challenges. Companies have had some challenges developing billing invoices with location of barcodes, scan lines, et cetera. That being a very time-consuming process. Is that something that you work with? So, you know, question is, how do you make this easier?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So GhostDraft's platform can be used to generate any kind of document, right? Most of our customers use us for policy and claims documents, and many of our customers use us to generate billing documents as well. And billing documents, as the question asker rightly states, have some unique challenges with them. A lot of times it's tough to build something like a table of contents, right? So if you're presenting a bill to a large commercial insurer and you've got, you know, the first 3 pages that's a TOC referencing information further down the document, that can be a challenge. Anything printer related or scanner related, insertion equipment, all that kind of stuff. So things like barcodes and insertion marks and all those things. GhostDraft does have some pre-built workflows from an operational perspective that can be configured to place those data points on a particular part of the page on an ongoing basis. So we have a pretty robust, we call it configuration manager. I guess that's not a very inventive name, but this is where workflows are set up within the solution that enable packets to be generated, right? So again, one of the other challenges, and not just with billing documents, but all of the documents that exist within the carrier environment are one document is not necessarily one thing that's delivered to a policyholder or an agent or another interested third party, right? So most documents require lots and lots of supporting documents that come from potentially many other areas within within the organization. So our configuration and workflow capabilities enable all of those documents to be brought together and kind of sewn into a neat package. And then we return to the calling application, probably the billing admin system, policy admin claim system. We can return that kind of package of documents with all of the requirements, a lot of indexing requirements, as well as barcodes and the like, to send to online storage solutions like an ImageWrite or something like that, for example. So all of that indexed information can be sent along with those packets of documents as well.
All right, and it's interesting. We also have a question out here, which is, I guess I'd say, somewhat related to that, and that is, within an organization, who are the typical users of the GhostDraft platform? And certainly, it's a little bit broader than I guess most people would probably imagine.
Yeah, a great question. Like I said, we developed the GhostDraft solution with the business unit as our primary user. And what does that mean, right? So we typically see about 4 different areas within a carrier organization that will touch GhostDraft in some way. From a design and ideation perspective, those users always exist within underwriting, product management, and compliance. These are the people that are tasked with potentially generating new proprietary forms for new product offerings, or maybe you're moving into a new state, and you need to generate all of the forms for the products that you sell. And so those people are the ones that will, create the language, right? So we have capabilities within our platform that enable you to a product owner or a product manager to search through a repository of existing documents for particular paragraphs, or even a word, or some kind of coverage, right? So those people we see them as firmly business users, product owners, product management, the compliance people that work on documents before they get submitted for filing. And maybe legal has some involvement there, maybe some people in marketing or external communications has some involvement there. So once we get through that design process, we then typically see a business analyst type resource kind of work collaboratively with those business people and work to specify those documents, right? If it's a more complex document, let's say it's a deck page, and so you need to put all of the coverages on the document in a certain order, and they need to have all of the right business logic behind them. You need somebody that has a better understanding of where that data exists within your core system. They don't really need to concern themselves with GhostDraft. They do not need to concern themselves with how to get that data. They just need to know that it's a data-driven field that has variability, and they need to kind of know how to, in plain English, express like a SQL line of code, right? So if a certain set of conditions are met, then perform some actions, and then put it all on the page in a certain order. So the system itself is set to be used by that business analyst type resource to facilitate that specification, and also to build that robust business logic within our template authoring environment. And then the final group of users, as I mentioned before, would be operational and IT, right? The people that would be tasked with looking within that core system, the claims admin, policy admin, billing admin, and working with the raw data from there to map into the document domain model that exists within GhostDraft to make sure that all of the data is coming across properly from that system. And then the operations folks on the back end, once all of the documents have been designed, authored, built, and tested, the last thing is to get them out the door. So we see some operations folks involved in that process mostly.
Excellent, excellent. So yeah, it's pretty broad across the organization.
Yeah, hence the need for collaboration, John, right?
Yes.
And so that's, the collaboration kind of process workflow automation that exists within GhostDraft that essentially tracks every every change and update to that document from that design phase to the delivery phase, right? And the ability to report on that and generate analytics and the like.
Okay. You know, our title on this session is about speed to market. So I've got a question out here that I think is spot on. How quickly can an insurer expect to be up and running on GhostDraft's platform after purchasing a license?
Well, good news there. Is certainly if it's an AAIS and GhostDraft mutual customer, which we hope most, if not all of you, either are or will be, then boy, the content's already built, right? So if you're launching products, GhostDraft has built a library of forms that we are able to download from AAIS. We're able to build all of the business rules that apply to those forms, and we will be able to deliver those to the GhostDraft environment in your world day one. Right. So all of that content and all of the logic that drives that content will be delivered the moment you sign a contract with our organizations. There still remains some effort, and that effort revolves around mapping the data from your core system into that document environment. More good news there is that we partner with many of the leading administration systems out there. So we have pre-built integration into many of those platforms. We have pre-built data integration into many of those platforms. So if you're using pre-built bureau content and you're using one of the core administration systems that we have a partnership with, then the effort that's in front of you is to test. Right. And that's no small effort, right? You've got to ensure that the document and the documents and the data are remain compliant. We typically see a new customer that has a mix of bureau forms and a mix of proprietary forms able to be in production with our line of business a couple of months to 90 days.
All right. That's fantastic. And I've got a question here that I think ties into that, because the question is, says insurance products consist not only of forms, but also proprietary rules manual, proprietary exceptions to the advisory organization manuals. Can your system be leveraged to compose and track changes to manuals?
We will receive that information from, an actuary, a rating system or a rating engine, typically, right? So we certainly are not, and have kind of made a pretty firm decision not to be in the business of making changes to manuals and rates and rules and all of those kinds of things. So we certainly enact them within our solution, but we prefer to leave that to the experts.
And yeah, and that makes perfect sense. There's a lot that's involved in that. And my interpretation of the question, I think you answered it just perfectly. It's like, yes, the implementation of it, cool, we can handle that. Development of it, that's somebody else's.
That's right.
Excellent. I think we've got time here probably to handle one more question. So I'll throw this last one out. Do you support the concept of pods? For example, if I have to replace the logo on all the templates, is that possible? I mean,
Sure.
possible. And then there's a follow-up that says, well, it's related to speed of change. So I'm assuming those two go together, and that was clarification that it's not truly can it be done, but can it be done rapidly?
Yeah, yes is the answer to the question, and absolutely it should be done quickly. So the concept within GhostDraft, we call it reusable content. And we treat reusable content. Whoever asked that question, we should probably talk and walk through a solution or a platform demonstration at some point so we can show it to you. But conceptually, we treat each piece of reusable content as a separate document within the GhostDraft template authoring environment. And we essentially enable the user to go in. If you're changing a logo, I'll give you a great anecdote. I like to tell this short story. We had a customer that went through a 100th anniversary. And they came to us and said, boy, we need to replace our existing forms generation capability because we had a 100-year anniversary, which obviously lasted for 1 year. It took them about 4 months to change all of their documents from the old logo to the new one that said 100th anniversary. And then it took them about another 3 months or so to unravel that change. With GhostDraft, you have your images stored as a separate document. You make a change to that image, and there are all of the references to all of the documents within your entire library are immediately changed. So it's kind of a one-touch process to make that kind of change. A new signature on a document, for example, logos, that headers and footers and that kind of stuff. Very, very simple.
Okay, so I know I said that was the last question, but there's one more that actually relates directly to that one, which I'll just throw out there also. Related to the question regarding logos. Are you able to identify the documents that would potentially need to be refiled?
That's a great question. No is the short answer to that. However, we are actively working on developing a solution that will integrate with Surf. It's probably a year out before that product is even probably beta ready. So at this point, no. Now we do have the ability to put a lot of metadata into documents that run through the GhostDraft platform. And so it is possible to set a flag within metadata that says, is document filed or not? And we can certainly report on that or generate indexes around that information, but it's not an automated process currently.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, well, we've got a couple of questions out there that we haven't had an opportunity to get to, and we will we'll respond to those following the session. But Laurence, first of all, terrific discussion.
Agreed.
Thank you for the engaging conversation today. And also thank you to our attendees for all of the questions that you provided. It's been, I think, a great dialogue. And we appreciate your engagement and your input.
Really appreciate your time today, everybody. Thank you.
Yes, and that is all the time that we have for today. I want to thank you all again for attending this AAIS webinar.